Anyone else who have 1 minute? Just having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a pilot. He sent me a video of him landing an A380 in Dresden airport. So I looked up on Meta AI. I said, how long is the runway at Dresden airport? It's 2,800 meters. I said, how much runway do you need for a A380? And it said 3,300 meters. So I just sent him a message back saying, I don't believe that you landed your airport at Dresden because the runway isn't long enough. And he said, AI. He said, I landed in 1,700 meters and I didn't even use reverse thrust. So I tried Grok AI, and that was actually a lot better, a lot more detailed. It said you can land at Dresden, but you wouldn't do it with a fully loaded plane. But if you're landing with a light plane, you can do so. Grok seems to know what it's talking about. Grok's such a great word. You probably don't know the word grok. I know Joe knows the word grok. You know the word grok? No, that's grog. No, grok was in the book Heinlein. Yeah, and it was was he an alien or was he just born on Mars?
An alien.
He was an alien. Yeah, and he had this thing that to fully understand something in totality means you grok it. So it's a great name for AI. Shall I get started? Anybody here never done meditation before? Anybody consider themselves a real newbie to meditation? You all have, more or less. Okay. So I'll give a few basic instructions. I'll give a few tips for those with more experience, and we'll sit together for about 30 minutes or so. Just let these last few people come in. My friend doesn't like the A380, as he says. He was, all his career he'd flown jumbo jets, Boeings, and Qantas forced him to change to an A380. He had to do an awful lot of studying for the manual to just learn the specifics of the plane and angles and takeoff and how. It's really quite a difficult exam to get through. And he said the Boeing, you fly it and you land it. He said that the Airbus, you have to ask the computer, please, do you mind landing the plane at this airport? Because it's all done by computer and you can't actually move any flight surfaces. Yeah. I just find it amusing that people have these problems at work even when you're flying super jumbo aeroplanes. You still have things annoying you at work. Okay, should we get started? Settle yourself into comfortable position for meditation. Sitting upright, make the determination that this is the time for meditation. It's not the time for thinking, planning, wanting, worrying. All those thoughts are real problems are real, but we are cultivating that space away from all those thoughts, worries, ideas, dreams, desires. For those who are new, I'd recommend you place your attention onto the breath as it runs through the body. If you follow the physical sensation of the breathing as it runs down the spine, actually will run all the way to the seat, the physical feeling of the breath. You may know logically the air separates into the bronchial tubes and lungs at the back of the body. But if you follow the physical sensation, run straight down the center of the body, all the way to the seat. You establish mindfulness. That is, you're not lost in thought. You're not lost in experiencing, listening to sounds, thinking thoughts, feeling feelings. Mindfully one breathes in, mindfully one breathes out. It's not a concentration exercise. You're not putting your concentrating attention on the breath, but catching that open, aware presence while the breathing runs through the body. After a few minutes or a few moments, the attention will wander away. Any repetitive action, the mind figures out the pattern, then the conscious attention wanders away onto other things. Same as if you are driving a car, you can be driving, your body and mind driving the car, but your conscious attention wanders away into thinking. Pay close attention where your conscious awareness has gone. Has your conscious awareness gone to sounds around you, gone to the past or the future? Has it gone to worries or wants or needs, physical feelings, sights, internal or external? When you realize your attention has wandered away from the sense of the breath running through the body, note where your attention has gone to and label it: thinking, thinking, worrying, worrying, feeling, feeling, pain, pain, seeing, seeing. Any label will do, just enough to note your attention had wandered away. This awareness of where the attention is going is the important quality. It's not a practice of concentrating on the feeling of the breath to the exclusion of all other things, but that open, mindful awareness. Those of you with more experience meditating, you might note only one thing occurs in conscious attention at a time. The mind goes to a sound, a thought, a feeling, a memory. One thing at a time. Grabs hold of this, lets go, grabs hold of that. If you are not mindful, your mind gets drawn into the object. You start to think about it, imagine it, conceptualize it. You are now caught in the conceptual world, maya, delusion. To step out of maya and delusion means attention does not get drawn into any conceptualizing any thinking, dreaming, then attention is simply with the direct sensory experience of the body, without verbalization, without thinking about anything. Step into this vivid, bright, aware, direct experiencing. Train yourself to be aware and be attentive without lapsing into thought, without lapsing into maya. In this meditation, there is no particular object, simply sharpening, brightening, clarifying, purifying the sense of self should intensify. Don't get lost in the breath or states where the self disappears or mindfulness becomes dull. Consciousness intensifies, brightens, clarifies. Train yourself to be aware outside of maya, outside of the conceptual world. So for the final 5 minutes of the meditation, turn your attention to the idea, thought and perception of loving kindness. Any way you can arouse this is valid. You may think of those people who have helped you, nurtured you, people living or passed away, those you have met or maybe have not met, any saintly figure, for whom it's easy to arouse the idea and thought and perception of loving kindness. Arouse this feeling any way that you can. You may also visualize spreading brightness from your own being to all people in the world. Or you may use the words, may I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering. May all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free from suffering. Find your own method. Arouse this feeling of loving kindness, allow it to brighten your mind. Keep bringing attention back to that non-verbal present moment awareness. Shining out with power, with confidence, with joy. Once the mind is thus bright and clear, joyful from loving kindness, withdraw the attention from any object. Just settle into that mindfulness with vivid body awareness. And dedicate whatever merits may be gained from our meditation, now or in the future. We dedicate to the welfare of all world beings. Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabbaso sabba buddha nupavena satta soti bhavantu te. Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabbaso Sabba dhammanubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te. Sabbe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahantanancha tejena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabba sanghanubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te. So relax your posture. Okay, so if you're all ready, this evening I wanted to mention one of the ways that the Buddha talked about meditation, rather straightforward. In fact, usually when he talked, it was quite straightforward. It just gets made complicated by people, especially because he talked to many people in many different ways, and then scholars and Buddhists have tried to assemble everything that he said into some kind of consistent matrix. And the trouble is, he would talk differently to different people. There's the one time that he said the contemplation of feeling, liking and disliking, or the traditional translation, pleasant sensation and unpleasant sensation. He said there are three kinds of feeling: liking, disliking and neutral. And then at another time he said to another group of monks, he said, there is physically liking, disliking and neutral, and mentally liking and disliking. So there are 5 kinds. And then the monks started arguing whether there are 3 kinds or there are 5 kinds. And they took this to the Buddha and they said, well, are there 3 kinds or 5 kinds? He said, sometimes I say there's 3 and sometimes I say there's 5. So this problem occurs when you try and assemble all of the teachings into a consistent, coherent whole. I like that statement. I have no idea where it came from, but that there is only one Buddha in the world at a time, because if there was 2, the weight of their goodness would be too much for the world to bear and it would crack into pieces. I like that idea. And the second reason was, if there was 2 Buddhas in the world at a time, their disciples would fight with each other over who is the correct Buddha. Which I'm pretty sure is true. So usually he would talk in ways that were quite straightforward and quite simple. And one of these ways that he would talk about meditation is when attention is scattered. The usual Pali word for this was called papancha, but there were other words that he used also. When the mind becomes scattered externally as opposed to inwardly composed. So these were 2 opposites as a way to contemplate or to measure your meditation. How the mind becomes externally scattered or diffuse is another word. What happens is something occurs to your attention, somebody around you makes a noise or does something that catches your attention, and then you start to think about it. I saw this on the SkyTrain yesterday, because I actually thought it was Monday yesterday, so I came here. And I came up, I'm like, man, the crowd is getting less and less. And I went back down and the coffee shop said, yeah, we wondered why you were here on a Sunday. So I came here yesterday. That's how mindful I am, you see. So I came here yesterday and there's this girl on the SkyTrain and she had a bag of mango and then the stuff, the chili stuff that you put it in. To Westerners, usually we wonder why you would want to put chili on a mango. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So it caught my attention and I was like, why? And she'd pull out the bag, she'd get the piece of mango, she'd dip it in the stuff, she'd put it into her mouth, she's obviously enjoying it, and she'd wrap up the chili stuff, wrap up the bag, and put the mango back in her bag. And then she'd finish chewing, and then she'd get the bag out, go in, get another piece of mango. And she did this like over and over and over. I said, why didn't you just leave the bag open? We all can see what you're doing. You're eating on the SkyTrain, which is not allowed, by the way. So my mind is getting caught and scattered externally. Something has come into my attention, it's caught my attention, and my attention is now going to that thing. Note that your attention goes to one thing at a time. Yes, we can say, well, you're thinking about the girl and the mango and the stuff and the rules of the SkyTrain. What's happened is that thing has come into your attention has been drawn into it. Now you are caught in the story. Caught in the story, in the conceptual world. And this conceptual world is where people live. It's where you solve problems and plan retirement, pensions, and it's where you live and die. It's where your relationships are. It's all in this conceptual world. And you build this conceptual world, you put objects into it and people, and then you maneuver them around, and you put yourself into the conceptual world also, and then you think about me interacting with this person or this job or this. And that's where human beings live, in this conceptual universe, at least as we get older. Remember when you were a child, you didn't do that so much? You could just ride your bike and enjoy riding your bike. I'd forgotten how nice it is to ride a bike. Sometimes I break rules. We have a lot of rules. People think there are 227, but it's not true. There's at least 5,000 rules in the Vinaya. Rules you don't even know what they are or what they mean. And then some rules contradict other rules. And anyway, in Thailand, one of the rules is you don't ride bicycles. I'm not sure it's really in the monks' Vinaya, because they didn't have bicycles, but so I was down in Hua Hin, staying with some people, and they had some very nice carbon fibre bicycles. And it's a bit of private property. And there's not only about, the driveway is about 20 or 30 meters. And I'm looking at this bike, I'm like, I really want to have a go on a bike. Anyway, I did it. I jumped on the bike. Man, it's like flying. It's incredible. I'd forgotten what it was like. The driveway out of the driveway and all the way to the main road is about a 5-minute walk. And if I order anything, I have to walk out. It's like 30 seconds on the bike. It's amazing. So I'm drawn into that conceptual world now, like, well, can I go out and ride the bike? What if somebody sees me? And it's on a beach, so I'm thinking, I can ride on the beach at 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's going to see me, and if they do, what they're going to do about it? I'll be too fast to get a picture. You won't get my face. I reckon I can get away with it. Unfortunately, the tide had other ideas. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, the tide was in, and I couldn't go out. It's like, man, I need to come back here. I was trying to ask AI, like, how long until the tide is out? 4 o'clock in the morning, I can get on my bike. So you get drawn into, I see the bike, I want to ride the bike. Now I get drawn into the story. And I can live in that conceptual world for a long time. This is called Maya, delusion. When you are lost or caught in the conceptual world, manipulating things around, working things out. And that's where you run businesses and relationships and plan your future, and that's where your world is. You need to. It's a vital part of being a human being. But this is Maya delusion. This is why I insist that real meditation is not focusing on an object. This is important because so many Dharma teachers will tell you, focus on the breath. Often they say, focus at the tip of the nose. No such thing appears in the suttas. No sutta says, focus attention on the tip of the nose. It does not occur. Or focus in the body, or focus on rising and falling of the abdomen, or so many different things. I had one time I was meditating early on as a meditator, and I would kind of get into this still point, but my mind is definitely getting lost in the feeling of the meditation. And the teacher says to me, I don't know what you're doing, but it isn't meditation. He said, you focus rising, falling, bum on the floor, rising, falling, bum on the floor. You feel the pressure. I'm like, man, now I've got 3 things to look at. And then he started adding things in, was rising, falling, and the feeling of the hands. Rising, falling is the feeling of the bum, feeling of the hands. And you add more and more things into, like, it just felt like so, I want to be peaceful when I meditate. I don't want to be zip, 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 zip. Yeah, he's not teaching in the right way. It took a long time for me to get the confidence that I can say that. So many of my teachers that I've had gave me the wrong advice and give other people the wrong advice over and over. So putting your attention onto a meditation object, whatever object that is, feelings in the body, certain postures, certain asana, there is no limit to the number of perceptions that you can have. You can perceive light or dark, colors, blue, white, yellow. Not supposed to use red. You can visualize light or lights or candles. You can use mantras, any number of different mantras, Om Mani Padme Hum. In Thailand they use Buddho, Buddho. Breathe in, Bud, breathe out, Tho. I always want to ask, what if I breathe out Bud and in Tho? Will I not get enlightened? It's getting attached to meditation methods. Mahasi Sayadaw method, like heel up, lifting, moving, lowering, touching, pressing. 6 movements of the foot. And I was on this retreat with my university, and the monk leading it, he wants to see you go, like you're some kind of robot or 1980s cool dance move or something. Do you really have to do this to get enlightened? I had this thing, I don't know, in England when you walk, I guess it comes from the army, you always say left, right, left, right. Is that right? Right? You do that? So they'd asked me to lead the walking meditation, and so I was going left goes thus, right goes thus. And this monk came over and stopped me. No, 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 it's right goes thus, left goes thus. Like, what's the difference? If I say left, right, I'm never going to get enlightened. If I say right, left, I'm going to get to Nibbana. What's the thinking here? So people get overly attached to meditation methods. There is no end to the number of perceptions that you can call into the mind, mantras. And in my temple they use Samma Arahang, they don't use Buddho, Buddho. And you don't tie it to the breath, so you have Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang. And you can speed it up or slow it down. It's not tied to the breath. There was a story of this is from 70 years ago. A woman had lung cancer, and she was doing Buddho, Buddho meditation, and she was getting worse. Then she came to my temple and she did Samma Arahang, and apparently the cancer disappeared. So she went around telling people, oh no, Buddho, Buddho is wrong, you have to do Samma Arahang, then all your sicknesses will disappear. I mean, and we have no idea that she may have been well for a week and then she died. We have no idea, but they will repeat this story. A point being that to call into mind a particular perception, there is no end to the number of perceptions that you can call into the mind. Loving kindness, universal compassion, infinite consciousness, all kinds of things that you can perceive. But all of them are just an object of perception. You're perceiving something. You're ignoring other things and you're dusting off this one thing and bringing this one thing into mind and concentrating the mind on it. Then your mind will take on those characteristics. If you think about Elon Musk clearing out Doge with his thing, you might like it, you might dislike it, you create a certain state of mind, you bring it in, you are lost conceptually. You think about fluffy kittens, then your mind becomes happy and beautiful, presuming that you like kittens. Maybe you don't like kittens. You definitely can't be a meditator if you don't like kittens. They're just objects of perception, and every object of perception will have an accompanying set of feelings with it. There should come a time when you start to realize that I'm just changing one object of perception for another object of perception. And if in normal life, something comes into attention and you enter into that concept, and now you're moving all the concepts around. As a meditator, you step out of the conceptual world and you notice, well, I'm just using meditation objects, one after the other. Tip of the nose, or loving kindness, or a mantra. You're still just switching one object of perception for another. So there comes a time, should come a time, when it occurs to you, what if my mind was to stop going to any objects of perception? My mind going to this, and then this, and then this. Or my mind goes to this, and I hold it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How long can you hold it for before it goes away? If you practice hard, you can get quite absorbed into the object. I was just reading a book about a monk, and he was told to focus on the third eye. I'm not sure which is the second eye, but the third eye is here. And so he focused here, and then he found like a tingling sensation. So that must be it. So he went into the tingling sensation, and then it was a pulsing in this tingling. He got so concentrated, he could feel each little pulse of tingle. And then he thought, well, what if I was to catch that pulse and just stop on the pulse so it no longer pulses? So he went into this. And he gave himself a blinding headache. And he went to the teacher, and the teacher said to him, stop meditating. So he stopped, but then he couldn't sleep because he'd have this thing which is so heavily into his consciousness. And then he became very uncomfortable not being able to sleep, and he wound up going to see the doctor, who gave him anti-anxiety pills. After taking this pill, he could sleep. And after he slept and he woke up, he felt really peaceful, and he got the idea this is the way that you pacify the mind and take the pills. I'm not kidding. I can send you the book. It's an interesting experience. That's not going to do it. You know about the doctor who said, the guy said, I have too much greed. And the doctor said, we have pills for that now. And the guy said, give me lots of them. So what had this monk done? He had just grabbed an object of perception and was so intent on holding it with such clarity and stillness. I mean, I'm sure he was German. it's not the right way. Hanging on to objects of perception and focusing in, that there was a mistake within the translation of Buddhism that translated samadhi as concentration. And samadhi actually means to gather. So one of the ways that the word samadhi is used is if you gather firewood to make a fire, that is samahita, comes from the word samadhi, which is the verb of the word samadhi. It means gathering together, literally, that's what it means. So the Buddha had 3 words. I can call it up, I have it on my computer, but santita. I've forgotten the second word. Meant to gather together, or if a crowd gathers, for example, that would be using this verb. So means to gather together, or to stand together. So it's often translating as to stand, which is where I think they got the idea of to concentrate on. But it actually means just to gather together. The second word he used means to sit down or to place. And the third word was ekoti, which means to unify. So this was how the Buddha described it. He's you gathering the mind back together and unifying it. No mention of any object of perception. No mention of objects of meditation. So this is what happens when we should be observing meditation. Step out of the conceptual world. You have to exit Maya. Basically that means stop thinking. Stop thinking about stuff. Now you may still have thoughts come up. That's okay, but you're not entering into them and into the conceptual world. You come into raw experiencing. Raw experiencing means direct sensory experiencing. You're just hearing sounds without adding to it, feeling the feelings without adding to it. It can be quite vivid. And you'll note this feeling, there is an intensified feeling of self, or an intensified feeling of self, of presence. This is different to getting lost in a meditation object. If you focus on the breath for a while, the mind can calm down and become quiet. You enter into that as a conceptual thing, and now you're back in Maya, back in the conceptual world. But what you are perceiving is quite calm and quite still. You can get lost there for a long period of time. I know I did. 20 years, I thought that was meditation, because the sense of self disappears, and you just out, and then the bell goes, and then was I meditating? Was I not meditating? It's kind of peaceful. I'm getting lost in a concept again. Stepping out of Maya means you're not getting caught in anything externally. The Buddha used this word, ajatang, externally. Externally means any sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. Even a thought, you may think that's internal, but your mind goes out to the thought. This is the way that the Thai masters especially talk about meditation. The mind goes out to an object. So even if I think about something in my childhood, that is an object of perception that's just arisen, and now I'm entering into it, or I'm leaving myself, I'm going out to the object. That's how the mind becomes externally scattered. Means continually the attention is being drawn into things. Internally settled, consciousness has the feeling of gathering together. Because the mind isn't going out to anything, you note it, note it, note it. Allow the mindful awareness of body as an anchor. Consciousness becomes diffused through the whole body. No need to find my knee or rising and falling or particular things. Or you can just use the breath as it runs through the body. Notice that's not an object, it's just a place to anchor attention. Then the mind becomes internally composed. So composed is a really good translation of the word samadhi. concentration isn't. Concentration is what you do when you're photoshopping a poster or something. For me, it's Photoshop. I get lost in Photoshop for hours. I can manipulating images. You get lost in music. You get lost in thought, sports, mixed martial arts. I got really into mixed martial arts for a while, watching it, not doing it. So that's to concentrate on. When you concentrate on something, or if I'm reading my book, I'm concentrating on reading my book. When you concentrate on something, you have lost self-awareness by definition. So when the Buddha talked about samadhi, this is not concentrating on an object, this is being internally composed. Consciousness gathers together because you feel it going out, and then you keep bringing it back. Settles, attention then settles within the body, not on an object, but vivid, bright awareness. Ekoti means to unify. So the third word, to stand, to gather together, to sit down, and then to unify. These are three words the Buddha used to describe samadhi. So that is when the mind becomes internally composed. This dichotomy between being scattered and being composed, the Buddha used very often as a description of the path. So he did say at one point, when the mind is externally scattered, it can become quite peaceful, but it is a peace based on diversity, not DEI stuff, but diversity of the mind going around everywhere. So that's when you're sitting in your chair, nothing particularly happening, and you're thinking, a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this. And you can feel quite calm because nothing's really bothering you too much. That's not composed. He said, the mind based on nippapancha. Papancha is to be scattered, and nippapancha is to non-scattering of mind. Means attention doesn't go out to anything. It's internally steadied, composed, and unified. A few things that you will note when this happens. One is you'll have an intensified body awareness. Consciousness comes diffused through the body, like mixing honey and flour. The honey becomes, if you mix it thoroughly, the honey becomes thoroughly diffused throughout the flour. So consciousness becomes locked in the body. Feels quite pleasant. It's important to note because very often meditation can be painful, body pains and different things. Note that when the mind comes together, it feels pleasant. It can feel bright. There's a couple of words. Vipassana, not vipassana, that's another word, but vipassana means to brighten. Pasada means to either brighten or to clarify or to purify. So there is a feeling of a brightening or a clarifying of consciousness that is quite evident. And you can feel when you bring objects of perception in and you start to enter into maya, you can feel that dullness as the mind leaks away. There'll be a feeling of energization through the body. So sometimes you can feel the body twitching, like as it straightens itself up. Piti, you have what they call applied and sustained attention, which means you know you are holding your mind steady. But that holding of the mind you can let go of. So the words in the Pali were vitaka, vichara. Vitaka, which is the Thai word vitok, which means to worry about, usually Thai. If you have vitok, it means you have a worry. But actually, vitaka means to direct the mind onto. So it's described as like a bee that sees a flower and it starts to aim towards the flower. That was Vitakka. Vichara is where the bee hovers around the flower. So to place attention on and then to contemplate, something like that. So Vitakka Vichara means you're placing attention not on any object, just keeping it steady. As this brightens up and becomes more concentrated or more vivid, then you can let go of the placing of attention. There is a piti, energization runs through the body. You can shift onto the piti. This energization that comes through the body will feel pleasant, not ecstatic or incredible, but feels pleasant. That you can follow. Don't think that I'm just getting into pleasant states of mind. The Buddha said this you can follow. Because this pleasantness is not based on sense desire. Normally pleasant sensation is based on sensory input, right? So your rugby team wins the World Cup, like yay. My happiness is dependent on my team winning the Rugby World Cup, which they did once, about 20 years ago. I still remember. Or getting what you want to eat, or sensory input normally is what gives you pleasure. When the mind stops going out to anything, this starts to feel happy, feels bright. So this is piti. And then a happiness can arise, which is an interesting one. It's an absurd kind of happiness because it has no reason for it. And in concentration, it just bubbles up and you're happy, you don't even know why. So, this was one of the Buddha's ways of describing the path. He said, draw a distinction when the mind is externally scattered, when the mind is internally composed. This internally composed is not concentrating on an object. That's just another object of perception, and there is no end to the numbers of perceptions that you can have. But this route out of the perceiving mind into these enlightenment experiences, this is the hardware, this is hard baked in. It's not a matter of opinion, it's not a matter of meditation method. This is the structure of consciousness. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for this evening. If you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to raise them. Go ahead.
When you mention about the brightness,
Yes.
you mean like when we... Okay. When you mention about the brightness, you mean like when we're like doing meditation, right? And then I close my eyes, and then like after like more than like 30 minutes, like before the end of meditation, I feel like it's bright. So it's the bright that you can feel in the during the meditation, right?
Yes.
And then sometimes it gets light too, like the body, like the whole weight, it's just like somehow disappear.
Light in weight.
In weight.
Yes.
Like I couldn't feel, like I can feel my body, but it's getting lighter.
Yeah.
So that's the same with the brightness that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And how about like another weird feelings about like of having like coolness, like all over the body or in the particular parts of the body. So is that considered like brightness too, or it's just different? Thank you.
As for brightness, yes, that's brightness. And you'll notice the way that you described it, this is not lights coming in and seeing lights, but a feeling of brightness or awareness or clarity, something like that. Because I was waiting for lights. And I was, for years, my teacher talks about, one of my teachers, and he said, you bring this light into your body and it lights up. So I'm waiting for my light to come. And it was years later I met Ajahn Brahmot, if you know him, in Chonburi. and he's quite famous, and he can see inside your mind. And so you go and sit with him, and if you get chance, and he'll look inside your mind and tell you if you're doing something right or wrong. I wanted to ask him a question. He was associated with this place, and I wanted to use this place, and I thought, if I get him to put the word in with the owner, we can use this place. So I got him, and I said, oh, you this place, and he just dismissed me without any consideration at all. Well, I tried, no hard feelings. So I went into my meditation, and I thought, I'll just sit there. And then I opened my eyes, and he was looking right at me. And he said, you just made your body bright, do it again. I was like, my hair standing on end. It's like, ugh. But that's when I realized that brightness wasn't light, it was this feeling of just luminous awareness. And like, oh, that's what is meant by it. So then I had the confidence, okay, that is a sign that I'm going in the right way. And I'm not making it into an object. I'm not trying to create luminosity and enter into it. It occurs when I compose the mind, when I gather consciousness. So yes, that's light or brightness or luminosity, which will occur because you've stepped back from perceiving objects. No, you're still aware, you can still direct the mind, right? You're not lost in some kind of trance. This is another thing I was waiting for. I read a book about a guy, and he was in Sri Lanka, and he was living in a cave, and he'd sit in the cave, and then it would be 12 hours has gone by, and he just had one thing every day. He'd go down and get some food, and then he'd brush his teeth, and then he'd be gone, no sense of time. I was waiting for that, but that's a trance state. It's not what we're trying to get to. The luminosity, you are well aware. You can direct the mind if you wish to. You still have some thoughts coming in and some ideas coming in and out. The lightness of body in weight, when consciousness becomes diffused through the body, that tingling body feels light. It's not affected by gravity. And it can even feel like it's levitating. And so I've had this a number of times, and levitating my body. Now I know that I'm not levitating, right? I still have my wherewithal about me. I know that if I open my eye, I'm unfortunately still going to be lying on the floor as I was before. But the experience of levitating, or flying around the room even. However, you don't want to get moving around, just center that body and enter into that light, tingling body. Yeah. As for the coolness, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Yeah. This can happen from time to time, but I'm not confident to really...
It's not about the weather.
No, I understand, yeah. I get this, it starts from here, and I get like almost like a violent kind of like grabbing here, and then it can spread in this just pure pleasure that comes through the veins. I'm not sure if it's coolness or not. If you step out of the conceptual world and you start entering into this direct experiencing and the composing of the mind, you're on the right track. Some things are going to happen. You also get guided. Buddhism isn't supposed to talk about that, but you actually do get guided. So then you're on the right track. Yeah. One of the important things is whatever object you use to get there, you have to abandon. So using loving kindness, for example, or perceptions of infinite space or something, you can bring these ideas in and use them as a meditation, but you have to know when that object of perception is going to get in your way and abandon it and just compose the mind. Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, I have a question. It's not about meditation, but it's about something that came up in our group discussion last week. The discussion was supposed to focus on anatta, no self, but somehow we started talking about free will and the Buddha's teaching of free will. And almost all of the Westerners in the room started, dismissing it. Oh, we don't have free will. Science has proven that we don't have free will, and it's just imaginary. It's just a nice idea. And even if we had free will, it wouldn't make a difference because all we're doing is behaving the way we're conditioned to believe and behave and act and think. And I was one of the few people, defending the Buddha's, belief in free will. But I was wondering, did the Buddha give any kind of explanation or justification for believing that we have free will?
Yeah, modern cognitive science there's a famous experiment by a guy Lippelt with the spinning disc, and then you press the button when you want to stop it. But it turns out that your brain will decide to stop the wheel turning half a second before you actually say that you've decided it. It's a whole thing. It's probably just made it more confusing, hasn't it? But the result of this experiment was that the brain will start to do something before you register yourself as wanting to do it. So they use this to mean that you don't have free will. Your brain decides things before you have any idea about the decision. George talks a lot about this, these experiments. Then there was the question of, you might not have free will, but if you have an impetus to do something, can you stop yourself from doing it? And that's called free won't, as opposed to free will. Of course, the Buddha didn't get into these philosophical decisions, but he did talk about karma, and karma as the steering of your future. Now, if we go to, it's best explained by psychology. Freudian psychology said that your childhood experiences have formed who you are now. So you don't have much choice in who you are now because it's set in the past. The humanist psychologists said, no, it doesn't matter what happened in your past. Your character depends on your hopes and aspirations for the future. So they're firmly planting in the present moment a power of steering your consciousness or your being. So the Buddha talked in that way. He never said that karma is your past affecting you now. He said karma is what you do now affecting your future, which is totally different. Karma, what I do now affecting my future, puts all the agency into me, what I decide to do and how I act. If karma is just the result of your past actions, then I have no agency. So the Buddha was absolutely clear about that. Karma is action now affecting your future, not past affecting your present. That gives you agency or free will. So, yes.
Can I just add that for anyone who's well versed in logic, that experiment is has a logical fallacy. Just because I had the thought before I pressed the button, it was still my thought. Nobody made me have that thought. If I said, well, I'm going to move to Thailand, nothing forced me to move to Thailand. I made that decision. So it doesn't matter if I had that thought 20 years ago. It's my thought.
Even within cognitive psychology, there's a lot of debates about that experiment and a lot of criticisms of it. So yeah, I quite agree. It's a discussion. It's not a result. Right? It's not a proof. It's opening of a discussion. But according to the Buddha, definitely you have free will, you have karma, the action that you make now, you have absolute choice and agency over, and you need to be careful of it because this will create your future. Yeah. Go ahead at the back. Yeah, so even in that, these are, even going into these jhana states or absorption states, you still have thoughts and feelings and sensations come up, and they will still grab your attention and still try to pull you in. You remain in the state by not allowing the attention to get drawn into anything. This then, you just sharpen and sharpen and sharpen. Initially by placing attention. So there was a word in the Pali called ekagata, which is translated as one-pointed. And the way that it's traditionally taught means you put attention onto one thing, like the sensation of breath at the nose. However, gata can mean to place, and eka can mean equal. So equally placed, we would translate as equipoise. Not placing attention onto an object, but that equipoise of not getting scattered outwards. So that's what we need to find. And that will come in the body, inside the body. That equipoise then is like, oh, that's right. And you can go onto that. Yeah. So yes, there will still be things coming into attention and trying to grab your attention. Yeah. Over here. I want to bring these things up because nobody told me when I was practicing meditation and doing retreats and being with different teachers, and they were giving the wrong advice. And you start to mention any of these things, they say you just note it and come back to the breath. Well, you've already used the breath as far as it will go. And you're starting to attain into these correct experiences that the Buddha talked about. And then so many teachers, because they don't know what those experiences are, they keep trying to bring you back to the thing that they do, which is inevitably focusing on an object of perception, focusing on the breath here, or focusing on a mantra, or focusing on... and focusing on meditation objects is not it. That will get in the way of your meditation. Yeah.
I really like your bicycle story. I really love it. It was so funny. I have a question about how do you know that we are in a dream, or how do you know that we are in life? Is this both an illusion, or how do you can separate now what is what?
Well, I mean, are you a butterfly dreaming you're a human? Philosophically, what was that?
Take a red pill or a blue pill.
Yes, yeah. Philosophically, you can't, but experientially, you can. So this concept of Maya actually is not Theravada Buddhist, but is more of an Indian concept. The Buddha didn't deal with it because he's not interested in the conceptual world. Where he starts is where you're already brought attention out and you're already practicing. He's not interested in the conceptual world. That Maya, getting caught or lost in delusion, or the conceptual world, that you can feel when you get drawn into it and you're lost in a story. Then you can feel when you roll yourself out of the story and you're coming into direct experiencing. Now, direct experiencing is kind of bland in the sense that it's not exciting, you're not solving problems, you're not making money, but it's vivid in terms of its, the way that sound feels, or the body feels, or the skin feels, is very vivid. So that's the step. That's how you know you're not getting lost in a dream. The Buddha said, if you've seen the arising of the world, which means the conceptual world, you cannot say it doesn't exist. But if you have seen the cessation of the world, you cannot say it does exist. So in Indian philosophy, they say Maya is delusion, everything's delusion. And no, not everything is delusion. The conceptual world is still real. You still have bank accounts and pensions and degrees and family, and these things, you can't say they're not real. But when you've seen in the mind how this thing comes in and pulls you in, when you've seen how you can step out of it and come into this, start getting into these states of composed consciousness, then it becomes fairly clear and obvious. You're not getting lost in a dream. Yeah, quite the opposite.
Good evening. I'd like to go back to the previous topic of objects of perception. I understand you're saying that having an object of focus of perception is a good start for the practice,
Yeah.
as it allows you to anchor your mind. But at some point it starts to get in the way. So what is this point where it starts to get in the way and you should let go of that object or any other object and have that kind of, I understand,
Well,
diffused sense of awareness that you're talking about?
If you've got to the point where you need an anti-anxiety pill, it's got in the way. Yes, how do you know then when, I don't know, you feel your way through it. The one thing is, holding your mind on an object becomes tiring. And because it's tiring, the mind doesn't get enthusiastic about doing it. So the enthusiasm starts to die. When the mind becomes composed, it starts to feel pleasant, starts to feel happy, starts to feel bright. That happiness and the brightness is encouraging, so you want to do it more. So you start to pick up that steam, that energy, like, oh yes, that's right. So at that point, you know you can be dropping any meditation object. I'm not keen on meditation objects at all. I think they're very limited. Even the Buddha, even with the breath, they say concentrate on the breath. The Buddha said, arouse mindfulness while the body is breathing. He didn't say, focus your mind tightly onto the sensation of the breath and nothing else. So you're coming back to that breathing present body in this room, in the present moment, in the vibrancy of the senses. However, you still need to then go further and withdraw the mind from going to any of these senses, and it just becomes more and more composed. As it does, it should become brighter and more energized and more vivid, more pleasant, more enticing. And so many teachers will tell you, piti, the rapture, this pleasant feeling, it actually comes through the body. They say, oh, piti, you're getting lost in it. It will disturb your meditation. They are wrong, 100%. This is a pleasantness or a happiness that arises because the mind is not going out to any of the senses. This you can indulge in. The Buddha said, because I know this, I do not crave what is inferior. Meaning I don't crave sensory pleasures and happiness because I know this thing. And that should become self-evident. Yeah. One of the terrible things is both myself and a lot of people that I've talked to have been entering into these states and nobody has told them this is the right way. And then you don't know, you're like, well, that was like pleasant. It wasn't like enlightenment or ecstatic. And so you don't know actually that was the right way. You're already starting to move in the right direction. And I had nobody to tell me that. So for years I was just, anything that arose, I would dismiss it. Because meditation teachers tell you dismiss everything. And they're incorrect. So there are certain feelings and experiences that are the right way to go. Yeah.
What changed for you that made you understand that?
That's a good question. One was just intuition. I always had this intuition that holding on to an object of perception is tiring. It tires my mind out. And all these teachers that tell you to do this and this and this, and there's one system in the north of Thailand, you have, I think, 32 points on the body, in the elbows and the hands and the fingers, and you kind of, the more you add more and more in until you're zipping around. I'm like, oh man, even talking about it makes me tired. And mantras like Samarang, Somanu Padmyang, and people who practice the mantras, they will usually, 99% of them, will also tell you that there comes a point you have to drop the mantra because it will get in the way. So there was that trust and intuition. And also then I started to come across texts that was saying what I was experiencing. One of them was a guy called Lee Brasington. Look him up on YouTube. Very nice man. He's a layman. Very nice speaker. So he talks about these states and how you move between these jhana states, concentration states. Not concentration, they're composed states. And there's some texts as well. The main thing for me was I started to lose my faith in meditation teachers, and I would just follow what was actually in the suttas, in the text. And the sutta says, any object of perception you see with the eye, internal, external, near or far away, coarse or refined, that should be known simply as an object of the eye. You do not pay attention to the signs and features of that object, or unwholesome states will invade the mind. He holds himself with restraint regarding the eye. Any sound that, because you have the ear and you have sound, and the contact of the two, hearing consciousness arises. Any sound that arises in this way is just a sound. You do not get caught in the signs and features of that sound, or unwholesome states will invade the mind. He holds himself with restraint regarding sounds, and so on for all of the senses. What the Buddha is describing there is specifically not going in and having a meditation object. It's withdrawing and holding yourself in this equipoise. Now, the question is, if you withdraw from the senses, what's left over is this is, we call the dial tone from God, like a does this mean a dullness, zombie state? It's just the opposite. You get this sense of brightness, of sharpness, of clarity, of tightening of consciousness, of intensification of the self. Not the ego and the thoughts and the dreams and the aspirations, just that life force itself. This is the correct way to go. So you may have seen in Chinese Buddhism, they have a turtle. Just to finish off, because I know we're finishing up. The turtle, you can look it up, turtle with the world on its back. And so there are the images of the turtle. Sometimes they make the shell into the world, sometimes they put the world on the back of the turtle. What this means is, turtle has 6 limbs. When the limbs operate, the world appears. What that means is, when you are operating through senses, then the world appears, and that's Maya, you're in delusion. Also look up turtle or tortoise with scriptures on its back. What this means is, when the turtle withdraws from all objects of perception, the scriptures appear, or the Dharma appears. It appears directly, not as scriptures, obviously. You know directly for yourself. You can look these up on YouTube or on Google Images. Turtle with the world on its back, turtle with the scriptures on its back. So the Western philosophers, they met the Chinese philosophers, and the Chinese philosophers said, the world is carried on the back of a turtle. And the Western philosophers said, well, what's the turtle standing on? And the answer is, it's turtles all the way down. This constitutes a joke in the world of psychology, of philosophy. And it is a common joke, and it means an argument of infinite regress. But the point is, the world appears when you start to operate and you get caught into Maya. That's when the world appears in all of its majesty. The scriptures appear when you compose the mind and brought the consciousness together. So these three words the Buddha used, to gather consciousness, or to stand together, literally the meaning, then to sit down, or to place, and then to unify. These were the descriptions the Buddha used.
One last question. She was already asking for the mic.
Sorry, I asked a lot of questions today. Talking about dreams, for you as a monk or for us who try to do meditation, and sometimes we dream, whether it's good or bad. For personal experience, all the very good dreams that makes us like very happy, or it's kind of like if we dream about this, we're gonna win lottery, but it never happened. But like for all the bad dreams, like it becomes true. So as people who do meditation, do you recommend us to believe in those dreams? Do you believe in the saying that sometimes we do know what's going to happen before it happens?
I would come as a psychologist, and my degree is in psychology. Dreams are just the mechanism of your subconscious. So it's working through things that your conscious mind might not be able to work through. And it will manifest these in dreams. As to dreams actually predicting the future, I'm not a believer in it. But dreams are your subconscious, so they are relevant to you. I had this dream the other day, because you were talking about the coolness, and I was in some scenario, and a thing like an aeroplane was flying across. Now, I'm usually aware in my dreams that I'm dreaming. So I have a degree of control and a degree of like humor, and I can manipulate things. And sometimes I can wake myself up laughing with something I think of in the dream. And this thing came like an aeroplane, and I thought to myself, well, maybe it's not far away, maybe it's here. And then it was here. And it comes in like this, in the dreamscape. Then it turns around as this bright disc with another disc around it, and was really powerful. And I thought, is that a deva? And then it hit right here into this coolness or a bliss that just and started to spread through my veins. But as soon as it hit here, I'm back in my room. I'm no longer in the dream. And then, well, that's real. That thing that happened in the dream is real here. But anyway, what does it mean? I don't know. We'll wrap up for the evening.
Okay.
If we're ready to go.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much, Phra Pandit, for another excellent Dhamma talk. Thank you all for being here. As we always say in the announcement, we are here to support each other. We're all walking the path, and we have already walked a long time, a short time. We made little progress, a lot of progress, but we're here to support each other, and of course, we get our teachers to support us even more. Next week we're going to have a completely different kind of speaker. Woody Priep is going to be here here. And outside we have 2 donation boxes, one for Phra Pandit if you want to thank him, and the other one for Marie for providing us with this lovely pen. I think that's all for tonight.
I just very
If you can
briefly do the blessing. Sabitiyo avivajantu sabbarogo avinasatu mate bhavadvantarayo sukhidigayuko bhava abhivadana sili sanicang vota pachayino chattaro dhamma vadanti ayuvano sukhang balang. Okay, see you next time. If anyone has requests for topics, you're welcome to come and tell me, and then maybe in April, which I'm probably still going to be here, I can do any requests if you have them. Fairy tales, Samson, Delilah, karma. What would you like to talk about?